Hi, it's Daphne again. I hope you spent some time with the earlier part of chapter 1 that I read and maybe journaled a little bit about it. So I'm here with you today to read more of chapter 1 of A Tapestry of Love, the Spirituality of Caregiving. And that is my and Joe LaGuardia's book about the importance of spiritual practices for caregivers. So to give you a heads up as well, we are hosting a Zoom roundtable for caregiver support on Tuesday, May 12th. It begins at 7. However, the doors will be open at 6:30. So if you're interested, you can email us at a tapestryoflove@gmail.com. Let us know you're interested and we'll send you the link for the meeting. And we do hope to see you there. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of faces. So check it out. You can find us on Facebook at A Tapestry of Love. So find us, look for us, and I hope to see you on Tuesday. So with no further ado, if you'll remember, I read an interaction between Martha, Mary, Lazarus, and Jesus, taken from the Gospel of Luke. So today we're going to look more closely at Martha's story. Okay, so here we go. I'm beginning on page 17. So here we go. As we consider how Martha and Mary's story, our story, intersects with our life on several levels, we must first understand what is going on with the historical background of the biblical text. Where are there points of contact, as well as points of departure, between the biblical world and our own? What is happening in this drama that we often overlook at first glance? How do these characters relate to us? As the story above illustrates, we sense that Martha and Mary had a very close relationship with the one whom they called Lord, this Galilean peasant, Jesus of Nazareth. The author of this particular biblical story, Luke, picked up on this relationship and provided readers a glimpse into Jesus' private ministry with this incredible family. That the whole scene took place around a table reveals a distinct intimacy indeed. Jesus enters a sacred place in the home of these individuals. Jesus' meeting with this family came at the middle of his public ministry. Earlier in his ministry, Jesus and his disciples served over 5,000 people with food. They were tired from caring for all of those people who needed Jesus the most. By the time readers get to Luke chapter 10, we find Jesus needing solace. What better place to rest than Martha and Mary's household, which was obviously a safe, caring place for God's anointed one. Martha was very concerned about Jesus' needs and she did what was expected from many hostesses in her community. She readied her household, prepared a large meal, and provided care, like any good caregiver in the first century would do. Like caregivers who feel obliged to care for their own loved ones, Martha felt obligated to prepare a meal fit for a king for her special guest. Martha was quite productive in all that she did, but readers get the sense that if she took a break, even if only for a second, she might feel as though she failed Jesus as an effective caregiver. Martha was the doer. She was the task-oriented older sibling who ensured that everyone else was well cared for. And this left her utterly alone and frustrated. She wondered if anyone cared for her. She questioned Jesus' ability to understand her frustration, and she pointed out Mary's unwillingness to help in household chores. Yet there is something deeper going on in this story. Although Martha became overwhelmed, she made space for Jesus. She created a holy, sacred environment for Jesus, the Word of God, to rest. The interaction between Martha and Jesus has sacred value for caregivers today because Martha lived into her task, her calling, her vocation, as one who cared for others. Caregivers may connect with Mary as well. Luke wrote that Mary welcomed Jesus, but it was Mary who related to Jesus with attentive intimacy. Mary did not feel as obligated as Martha to meet the expectations placed upon her by society. Mary served Jesus, but she also took time to cherish a moment with Jesus in an atmosphere of sacred patience. In fact, Mary related to Jesus in a way that was not characteristic of women in her day. Mary sat at the feet of Jesus, a posture reserved for male pupils who sought wisdom from teachers and mentors. This historical nuance allows us to realize that Luke intended to grab his audience's attention. He emphasized Mary's interaction with Jesus. We, too, take pause when we read the story because we realize that the problem in this household was not necessarily related to what Mary was doing, but what she was not doing. Mary was not working, being productive, feeling pressured, or making use of her role as a caregiver, at least not at the moment. Rather, she sat in silence in the presence of a person who embodied God's intimate visitation upon the household. Mary valued rest in addition to hospitality, and she participated in a holy interaction. After all, if Jesus, God's very own Son, needed to rest after caring for so many people, then those who care for Jesus also needed to rest as well. Martha observed Mary's posture and took note. Instead of taking advantage of this holy interaction with Mary and Jesus, Martha asked Jesus a difficult, accusatory, and confrontational question. Don't you care? We cannot blame Martha for this harsh challenge. It is one question among countless others that caregivers asked in the midst of their frustrations. Martha cared for others, but who cared for her? She certainly felt that Mary had abandoned her. Caregivers care for others, but they often feel that no one cares for them. Martha's challenge communicates several undercurrents going on in her spiritual life. First, Martha's question exposes an undercurrent of resentment. It is a type of resentment that comes when a caregiver cares for another person without taking the appropriate steps to care for her own needs. Martha's question stemmed from the burdens surrounding her role as caregiver. It stemmed from a Martha who was alone, exhausted, and restless. It came from a caregiver who did not have the resources, much less the time, to tend to her own needs. The second spiritual undercurrent contends with guilt. There is a sense that if Martha stopped caring, then she would somehow fail Jesus. If she stopped even for a moment, she would have faced the guilt that accompanied yet another unfinished task. Failure often leads to guilt, and guilt often threatens one's very being. It was an undercurrent that kept things in motion and threatened to suffocate Martha in the deep, murky tide of endless obligations. Another spiritual undercurrent, one that is positive, is that of honesty. Martha was resentful indeed, but the fact that she asked Jesus this hard question shows a deep trust in Jesus. She trusted Jesus with her feelings. She asked a question that others might not ask, especially ask of God. Martha was courageous and honest, and she longed for Jesus to liberate her from her feelings of abandonment, guilt, and pain. As these undercurrents threatened Martha and her hospitality, Jesus responded to her with a great deal of patience and sensitivity. He did not vilify her for being honest. He neither rebuked her nor denied her feelings existed. Rather, he broached Martha's resentment with love and care. That Jesus spoke her name twice emphasized Martha's status as a beloved child of God in the person of Jesus Christ. God paid special attention to Martha and her concerns. Jesus also reminded Martha that caregiving was not an end in itself, and that caring for a loved one was not the only goal of hospitality. Instead, Martha's intentional care and concern revealed an opportunity for her to welcome God into her life and enjoy God's blessings. Martha's hospitality communicated great love for Jesus. However, Martha did not seem to realize that love was present in both the giving and the receiving of the caregiving relationship. Jesus modeled attentive sensitivity to Martha by addressing her question. He expected her to do the same when it came to his teaching. Blessings flow both ways. The caregiver is blessed by the act and the result of the caregiving relationship. The care receiver, oftentimes being unaware of it, gives blessings in return. Blessings shared in quiet conversation, in companionable silence, in the squeeze of a hand, or an understanding smile. We see Jesus gently reaching out to Martha, hoping she will see the blessings for her as well as for Mary. Many times he reaches for us when we care for others, and we are too resentful to recognize the divine interaction that takes place in our relationship with our loved ones. Jesus did not blame Martha for her resentment. Rather, he affirmed her and sought to mend her relationship with Mary. Jesus pointed to Mary as a living illustration of one who provided care to a loved one while also taking the time to grow in the Spirit of the Lord. Mary provided bread for Jesus, and she also recognized that Jesus was the bread of life. Martha was so concerned that she overlooked the nutritious presence that existed right before her eyes. Martha gave herself to a loved one as bread to be broken and served. But in failing to sit at Jesus' feet, Martha did not allow Jesus to be broken bread for her so that she could be made whole again. Mary, Jesus told Martha, chose a good portion of bread when she chose to sit at Jesus' feet. Now that we've made several points of contact with this story, what broader principles can we apply to caregivers? First, we must recognize that there is a little bit of Martha and Mary in all of us. The Martha in us is the task-oriented caregiver. It is the Martha in us who drones on about obligations and productivity resulting from the many tasks that lay before us, without which we would not feel very useful. The Martha in us feels that taking time to care for ourselves will lead to failure. Many caregivers already feel that they are not doing enough for their loved ones as it is. Accordingly, caregivers keep busy just to avoid facing the profound guilt that accompanies feelings of regret or failure. Like Martha, caregivers work endlessly in search of a false sense of value. So I'm going to stop there and add a little insight. I know sometimes we hear that we are either a Martha or a Mary. And it was important to us, Joe and I, that we point out that there's a little bit of both in everyone, even in you guys out there. So don't feel shy about allowing yourself to sit at Jesus' feet and partake of his bread of life. He is there for us. He sees all that we do when we're caring for someone, all that we do. And He gives it value. He can speak to our hearts and give us value. But admittedly, it is difficult, y'all, to hear Him speaking to us when we are forever busy. So if you're a mother and you've given birth and you've got that new baby, one of the most profoundly important pieces of advice that you'll receive is to sleep when that baby sleeps. And there's something to that when we're caregiving, and it matters not the age of the person for whom we're caring. When the care receiver, when your loved one rests, you rest. And I know there's dishes to be done and laundry to be done and the house to be picked up and groceries to get. I get it. But I want to give you permission. Jesus wants to give you permission to rest. So, I offer you a blessing as we wrap up this video. May the peace and solace of Jesus Christ enfold you, comfort you, and be known to you tonight and every night. Thank you.